Welcome to this episode of the Axecast. My name is Eric Samuel Timm, your life architect. And on this episode, we're going to be exploring the question, why is human life sacred? That's a good question, especially in the wake of pro-gun, pro-choice, anti-gun, anti-choice, the death penalty, the shootings, the tragedy, the triumph, and all of the pain all come down to the place where we see this distilled to the question at hand. Why does any of this matter anyway? Why is human life sacred? A question that's in front of us that will shape the future that's in front of us all. Hey, remember to rave, rate, and review this Axecast if you're being impacted by this. This whole idea of the Axe Academy, shaping the millennial Christian, sharpening their lives so they can really count, with an online community and this development platform, honestly only works if you help me make it work. So I'm asking for your help. We've got some really exciting news at the Axe Academy. We are focusing on sharpening 7 areas of your life. We've also focused this into allowing people to support as well as become a student of the Axe Academy, which exists for the millennial Christian who wants to make their life count. I can't wait to show you the 2-year path that you all can journey through to earn your own axe. Now, in January and in February, don't forget to check out our partners, feedone.com and sharewordglobal.com, where you feed a child in need for the entire month just by joining, and you actually put Bibles in the hands of people that are waiting for them. Recently, this last summer, an alligator in the news snatched a boy, and the dad jumps into the pond and literally wrestles this alligator to the death. I mean, his son was in danger. The dad rushes in. Why? Is it his son or is it deeper? That same time, there was another boy swimming in a pool, and he fell in the deep end, and just a stranger, just a person that didn't know that boy, jumped in to save them. Why? Because he's a stranger or because there's something more? Recently in the news, there was a boat that was shipwrecked, and a boy that was surfing actually went in to rescue the person that was drowning. Why? Why would that matter if human life is not sacred? If it was, if it isn't, or if it is, this has implications. Have you ever thought about that question? It really reveals the essential ethic that we all carry. C.S. Lewis says this: if a ship goes into the sea, you have to ask 3 questions. The first, how to keep from sinking. That's what's known as a personal ethic. The second, how to keep from bumping into other ships. That's what's known as a social ethic. And the third is just simply this: why is it out there in the first place? That is the essential ethic. Now, to understand why human life is sacred, you must first discover your essential ethic, which that question will be rooted in. You see, that essential ethic dictates your personal ethic that then moves into the interplay and presentation of the social ethic in society. The essential ethic is that bedrock, that foundation, that will allow you to answer the question, why is human life sacred? Now, there's different thought constructs. There's different essential ethics. I'm going to answer that question from a Judeo-Christian perspective. I'm going to answer that question based on the essential ethic from the Judeo-Christian worldview. Now, in the extended Axecast, for students or supporters of the Axe Academy, I'm going to offer up some profound implications, especially when it comes to a couple different topics that exist in our culture. I'm going to talk about, with our Axe subscribers, what are the implications when it comes to death? What is it when it comes to heaven or hell, in this word that has to do with judgment or justice? What does this have to do with the death penalty? What does this have to do with being pro-life or being pro-choice? What does this have to do with being pro-life versus an angry abortion? What does this have to do with restorative justice versus punitive justice? And what does this have to do with all of our sufferings, the trials and the triumph? We're going to look at some of those issues underneath the microscope in the extended Acts episode. So why is human life sacred? From a Judeo-Christian perspective, from that essential ethic. Every single one of you can be assured that human life is sacred because of 3 fundamental building blocks revealed by God for humanity. Let's start with a story. There's an old story about a Chinese farmer that buys a horse. A short while later, the horse just simply runs away. His neighbor says, "That's bad news." The farmer responds, "Good news, bad news, who can say?" 3 days later, the horse returns, but with an entire herd of wild horses. His neighbor sees his good fortune, comes to congratulate him on the good news. The farmer responds, "Good news, bad news, who can say?" The farmer gifts one of the horses to his only son. The son rides it only to be thrown from its back, badly breaking the boy's leg. "That's bad news," his neighbor says. The farmer just responds, "Good news, bad news, who can say?" Days later, the emperor summons every able-bodied young man to fight in the war. The farmer's son is spared. "What good news?" his neighbor says. The farmer replies, "Good news, bad news, who can say?" It all depends on where the story ends. And the only thing in life that we can predict, the only thing all humans agree that we can truly know, is that everyone's story ends the same way, in death. Human life is sacred because all of human life ends in death. We all die. This truth makes life here sacred. Our natural days are just simply numbered. The Bible clearly speaks about our days being numbered, our life being like a vapor, and what we do matters because it all ends in death, in the natural. Now, let me explain to you why ending in death makes it matter so much. Have you ever gone to a salad bar where you get one trip or you get multiple trips? I want you to think about how different you acted with the one trip versus multiple trips. If you can go to that salad bar and you can get multiple trips, then you just kind of get what you want and you go back and you go back a little more and you just keep going. But if you can only make one trip to that salad bar, you become a salad structural engineer where you're using carrots and a broccoli base and some spinach and bacon for some sort of support. And it becomes this like huge mound of salad that you bring back, dropping like little bits of egg along the way. And the reality is there's something about limited versus unlimited, and the limited just has that intrinsic value, and life is no different. Christopher Columbus, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington, and Daniel Boone, and John Adams, and Elizabeth Fry, and Davy Crockett, and Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, and Clara Barton, and Thomas Edison, Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington Carver, and Laura Ingalls Wilder. I love that show. Now, Orville Wright, all of these people, their lives ended in death. The reality, though, is their lives ended in death, but what they did is very much still alive. You see, what we do in our limited time matters. Now, a couple applications for the Christian. Just the simple truth is this, and we'll go into depth, like I said in the extended episode, but there's no hitch behind your hearse, and the end in the road is just a bend in the road. Why is human life sacred? All of human life has intrinsic worth. All of human life. It's got intrinsic, immeasurable value. We're not here by accident. We're here by design. And in that created order, we're not a blip on the radar. We're not some bubble. We are here because God intended to put us here. This implication, or this profound worth, is seen as we are made in God's image. In Genesis 1:26, the image of God we are made in. Not anything that we can get by effort, but it's what humans have as an intrinsic, essential worth. Now, this is important for us to note, because the reality is we forget sometimes that intrinsic worth that's in all of us. I love in the Mishnah Sanhedrin in 4:5, a commentary, basically from a Jewish perspective, was for this reason that man was first created as one person in Adam, to teach us that anyone who destroys a life is considered to have destroyed an entire world. And anyone that saves a life, it's as if he has saved the entire world. For man strikes many coins from the same die, and all the coins are alike. But the King of kings, the Holy One, the striker of humankind, from that die the first human, and yet no man is like his friend. Therefore, every person must say, for my sake the world was created. We all have intrinsic, immeasurable worth because we were made in the immeasurable image of God. Love your neighbor rests on loving God. There's a vertical and horizontal relationship, and the two are inextricably joined together. And we cannot forget the value that belongs, the intrinsic, immeasurable worth in other humans that are not like us, that don't think like us, that don't act like us, that aren't the same color we are or the same culture we are. People matter to God. And when you see people not as the enemy, but the mission, you start seeing them with the immeasurable intrinsic worth that God has, because His image is on them. All right, the third reason why human life is sacred is just simply this. Human life requires both trials and triumph. There's a trial and a triumph. All of our life. Now, if you can imagine with me on a sliding scale, and if you want to log in to the Acts Academy, if you are a supporter or you are a student, you can actually watch this sermon where I preach it at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, where I talk about the difficulty and the triumph, where I talk about the idea of how these things are connected. But if I can just sort of give you this visual here mentally, imagine your life on a difficulty scale. On the far left, it's the hardest thing you've ever had to do, and on the far right, it's the best thing that's ever happened to you, and in the middle, it's just sort of zero. So along this difficulty scale, you've got, like, when Chick-fil-A's closed on Sundays, or those auto flush toilets that flush when you're still on them and you're not ready. I mean, there's all these different things that are horrible. I hate that, by the way. On the other side, the triumph scale, you got things like, cinnamon rolls, and then, Disneyland, and maybe, let's get serious. On either side of these, you could have, well, on the difficulty scale, maybe there's a tragic death or disease or divorce. On the triumph scale, you have, maybe a birth of a child or a promotion at work or, getting married. I don't know what it is. All I know is that when I watch and I listen and I read the stories of Jesus, there seems to be this connection between the response of people's joy, which was parallel to the depth of their pain. It's like the trials of life open us up to the triumph of life. The trials of life open us up to the triumph of life. And where I see that is like, let's just simply go through just two stories. The feeding of the 5,000. People were hungry. Then Scripture records they were satisfied. Peter sinking, and then he's got great faith, and he's on this water. I mean, you can kind of see those two realities colliding. The woman who was healed from her disorder, her response is so different than other people's response that Jesus just simply fed. The man that was blind, he ran around telling everyone he could see. It was like the harder the road, the longer they can walk, and then the greater the pain, it seemed like the greater the joy. And I am convinced that in the reality that we live in, with the essential ethic that God has for us, our ability to have joy in this life is determined, or at least bookended, to the trial that we've faced on the other side in our lives. People that I meet that have had the hardest time see the greatest miracles. When I meet someone who's walked a hard road, I'm watching a world changer walking further. There's a lady in my church that had cancer, and she said, Eric, I wouldn't have changed it for a thing. I don't want to do it again, but it's made my life wider. Log on to that video, Acts students and supporters, and watch what I do with the rainbow and the story of Noah. Why is human life sacred? From different essential ethics, that's hard to answer. From the Judeo-Christian ethic or that baseline foundation, it's just simply because it's all numbered. It's like a vapor. Everything ends in death. Human life ends in death in the natural. And what we do in the natural simply matters for eternity. The second reason is just because we're made in the image of God with immeasurable intrinsic worth. All humans carry that value. And then the third is human life, the way that it is, requires both trials and triumphs. And somehow along the way, it's all sacred and God's with us in it all. Let me just give you these closing thoughts. I've been thinking about the implications of these questions. And in the Acts Academy, in the extended Acts cast, I'm going to talk a little bit deeper about abortion and gun control and the death penalty and all of these things that meet the laws and the religions, and all of these things come into this play, into the center sort of coliseum that is what it is. But I think that we all die. In fact, I'm sure we all die. In our story, it all ends the same here on earth. However, for the Christian, death is just simply not the end of the road. I think it's the bend in the road. And this journey is the destination. To be honest, just as much as the destination is the journey. And there exists a promise endowed by the Maker that while we're traveling on this journey, what we do matters in this life for ourselves and the people around us. And on that path, everyone, good and bad, born and unborn, free or imprisoned, are a reflection of God, created in that image with immeasurable intrinsic value, with great potential for both good and evil, and the power to choose. This value is never reduced by behavior or the laws of humankind. The value that humans have is a gift that's not depletable. Now, the trials we face, if circumstantial or self-induced, I think they open up the spectrum that makes the bookends for trial and redemption in life even possible. Our shadows only prove the need for the sun. This paradigm of experience provides humans with a will that is free to choose, and in that choice, operating within the sovereignty of God. The human choice that's ahead of us all, which we all have through various issues and situations, if we were going to err in this choice, or err on the very thing that we intrinsically and emphatically have been given, my thought is to err on choosing life. Human life is sacred. So choose the sacredness of it by choosing life. That concludes this AxeCast. Thanks for stopping in to sharpen your axe so you can build and blaze what you are made to do. Remember, keep swinging away. If you are a student or a subscriber, log in and take advantage of all of the things that are in the Axe Academy, the personal development platform and the online community for the millennial Christian who wants to make their life count. So much stuff is coming up. We've got this path to an axe. We're going to start sharpening the axe courses in 7 areas of your life. Remember to check out our partners, feedone.com, where you can feed a child in the developing world for an entire month for $10, and sharewordglobal.com, where they're putting Bibles in the hands of people that are looking for life. My name is Eric Samuel Timm, your life architect. Keep swinging away.